think it's, yep, John told me you could see it, so great.
You
Let me
good?
know if there's any technical problems that go on. It's always hard to tell with Zoom, but I am going to tell you a little bit about our therapeutic horticulture program up here at UF. And basically what I am going to cover, if I can get my screen, oh shoot, now it's already giving me problems here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of Wilmot Botanical Gardens, which is the site where our program is, because that really is very relevant to kind of who we are. And I'm going to give you some definitions about horticultural therapy versus therapeutic horticulture, talk to you a little bit about some of the programming here at Wilmot Botanical Gardens up at UF, and then just kind of pull it all together at the end. All right, so basically, the therapeutic horticulture program at Wilmot Botanical Gardens is a program that employs the power of that people-plant interaction, the nature of nature and plants to increase well-being and enhance the quality of life. And that's a very generalized way of saying that we're really trying to work with people and their particular needs based on their disease or special circumstance or whatever that might be, through the use of horticulture and nature and plants. So it is very hard to talk about the evolution of the therapeutic horticulture program without first talking about the gardens in which it sits. And you're looking at the gardens here. Some of you may have visited Wilmot Gardens before, but it really is an amazing place. It has a history that reaches way back into the 1940s. It is an old camellia garden, and Wilmot Gardens sits on the southeast portion of the campus. Um, it's surrounded by the medical facility, so it's very close to Shands and the Medical Plaza and the Davis Cancer Pavilion. And this gentleman here, his name is Royal James Wilmot, went by Roy, and he was a horticulturist at UF in the 40s and 50s and an expert on camellias. So he was nicknamed the Camellia Man and was given the task of classifying at that time the some 3,000 known varieties of camellias, some of which had 8 different names, and trying to figure out what was what. So you can see here, these are some of the bulletins that he put out through the Agricultural Experiment Station. You can see that one of these is from 1950, the other is from 1944, and camellia culture. And he was also a founder of the American Camellia Society, which was based in Gainesville at that time. Unfortunately, in 1950, Roy Wilmot died at the age of died at the age of 52. And soon after that time, these gardens were named in his honor. So this is a picture of his wife unveiling the monument that was dedicated to him. It sits in Wilmot Gardens. And at that time, because he was so well known for his work with camellias, camellias were sent from all over the world to be planted in the gardens here. In his name. And so we received gardens, I say we royally, of course, was not around at that time, but there were gardens that came from Japan and France and England in his honor and planted there. So at that time, Wilmot Gardens was the largest public camellia garden in the United States. This is a picture from 1958, and people just loved to visit these gardens. They were beautiful. And of course, the university community loved to come here, but so did just the residents of the city of Gainesville. People would come here and picnic, they'd walk on the weekends. Many people got married here. We actually have a volunteer who's an expert on camellias that she and her husband got married here. But sometime in the 1970s, budgets were tight at the university and a decision was made to stop actively maintaining the gardens. And of course, you all know, because you live in Florida, that when you do that in Florida, very quickly the natural elements start to take over. And any garden not maintained ends up not looking like a garden anymore. And that's what happened. So kudzu and air potatoes spread across the garden. In 2001, the southern pine bark beetle killed about 80% of the overstory shade providing pines. And if you know much about camellias, you know that most of them really like that shade. And then back-to-back hurricane seasons knocked down many of those dead pines, leaving the gardens in just a really terrible, very sad state of disrepair. Well, this is where Dr. Craig Tischer, who is one of my bosses, came into the picture. He was the dean of the College of Medicine at the time, and he'd been driving by this space for about 25 years. He says every day he would drive by and say, gosh, somebody needs to do something with that space. And so in 2006, in his retirement, he finally approached the university and the College of Medicine and said, hey, let me restore that. You know, I'd like to get some volunteers together and restore those gardens. And it was great because if he hadn't done that, these probably would have been turned into a parking lot or another medical building or something like that. So he put together a small but very dedicated group of volunteers that would come on the weekends and clean up the gardens. At this point, it was about 5 acres. It had shrunk quite a bit from the original size in the 40s, but they pulled vines, they battled invasives, they removed more than 60 fallen trees and lots of debris. Student groups got involved as well, and they very slowly began to restore these gardens. They found that the monument was still there. It was pretty dirty, kind of roughed up, but it was still under all of that stuff. And they actually even found some of the camellias under all of that mess. There were about 70 original camellias and azaleas that were still alive under there, and many of them even had their original metal tag. I'm sorry that this picture is so blurry, but that was one of the original metal tags, and you can see that this actually was from 1948 is when that had been planted in the garden. So there were some really beautiful ones still surviving, and of course we've planted many more since then. So today the work continues. The gardens are stunningly beautiful, but there's always work to do. We're always battling invasives. There's always some more areas that we want to work on, but they offer sunny areas, shady areas. There's lots of different pathways through the gardens. We have a beautiful creek, somewhat seasonal creek that runs through with a bridge here. There are many paved paths through the garden, so much of it is accessible. We have a beautiful Japanese maple tree garden and healing garden with some water features as well. There's a planting hub right here. You can see that we change out seasonally, and actually the plants that you're looking at right now, all these coleus and Princess Caroline grass, these were all grown by the Therapeutic Horticulture Program. So many of the plants that we grow in the program are actually displayed in the gardens or actually sold in our plant sales. There's also a small track in the garden that was originally installed as part of a research project. When the research project came to an end, the track stayed there, and we've actually planted, it actually doesn't really look like this anymore. This is an old picture, I need to update it, but it's a butterfly garden now, and a lot of natives and beautiful flowering plants in there that attract a lot of butterflies. And so it's a really nice spot to just to walk on the track and sit or come and have your lunch. And you can see in the background is the head house of the greenhouse. Let's see, there's some, this is the more wooded side of the garden. So there's some mulch paths there. There's a lot of benches throughout the garden to sit. People just come and they have their lunch. They take walking meetings. They just come to kind of get away. And then the monument is still there. We did get it cleaned up, put it back in its original place. And as I said, continued to plant some more camellias and got the camellias back in good shape that were there. And then in 2009, the university recognized the gardens with a historical marker as well. So that's been really great. There it is. Just gives a little bit of history about the gardens. And there's Dr. Tischer in the lower left there at the time that that marker was unveiled. So I want to go back to the importance of the history here. So this is a picture from the 1950s when the gardens were on the fringe of campus. So the gardens, if you can see my cursor here, would have been kind of down in this area. And you can see that the land was very agricultural. We're looking at a building with lots of greenhouses, very open. So that's what it looked like in the 1950s. Well, this is what that area looks like today. And this, where my cursor is Wilmot Gardens. So that's just under 5 acres. Here is the Shands Hospital. We've got the VA hospital over here. This is the South Tower of the hospital. If you're familiar with this area up here, the Shands Medical Plaza and the Davis Cancer Pavilion are here. There's the clinical or the Emerging Pathogens Institute over here. Lots and lots of research, medical stuff going on. We're literally a green island surrounded by this part of campus here. And then this area over here is actually Lake Alice. So although the goal of this restoration process was to heal the garden, to heal the land, the volunteers that were involved in this were also kind of going through this process of restoration personally in a lot of ways. This was a very positive experience for them in terms of not just feeling good about what they were doing for the space, but what it was doing for them as well. So as more people began to visit the site again, because the volunteers and the restoration process were making it possible for people to access the site and to be able to walk through it and enjoy it, we were seeing that they were also feeling that restorative experience. They were getting out of those buildings and those medical treatment facilities that were inherently often very stressful places, and being able to take some deep breaths and get outside and get a little bit of stress relief. Many of those visitors were doctors and nurses and other healthcare staff. Many of them were patients' families waiting for a loved one to get a procedure, or visiting some at the hospital, or things like that, or just staff, maybe students, maybe just people from the community. So lots of different people. But lots of people were coming to the gardens to really just get away and escape those stressors that were going on in all the spaces around the buildings, or I'm sorry, around the gardens. So it really seems just natural to take that next step in the life of the garden. And that was to create a program where we could provide purposeful healing for the community. And that's really where I came on board. And that was to create a therapeutic horticulture program to provide to patient populations and other groups of people that could really benefit from it. These are just a couple of shots of people taking advantage of the gardens here. So before I tell you about our specific program at Wilmot Gardens, I want to give you a little bit of background on therapeutic horticulture and horticultural therapy. Sometimes people use those terms interchangeably, but there actually is a difference in terms of their definitions. So I want to just tell you a little bit about those. So two definitions of practice really support the role of somebody like myself, a horticultural therapist: horticultural therapy and therapeutic horticulture. So horticultural therapy is the participation in horticultural activities facilitated by a registered horticultural therapist to achieve specific goals within an established treatment, rehabilitation, or vocational plan. Horticultural therapy is an active process which occurs in the context of an established treatment plan, where the process itself is considered the therapeutic activity rather than the end product. And horticultural therapy programs can be found in a wide variety of healthcare, rehabilitative, and residential settings. So horticultural therapy programs document outcomes for the participants on an individual basis. Now, therapeutic horticulture is the participation in horticulture activities facilitated by a registered horticultural therapist or other professionals with training in the use of horticulture as a therapeutic modality to support program goals. Therapeutic horticulture is the process through which participants enhance their well-being through active or passive involvement in plant and plant-related activities. So therapeutic horticulture programs can also be found in a wide variety of healthcare, rehabilitative, and residential settings. So just to sort of reiterate here, the components of a horticultural therapy program are the engagement of a participant in horticulture-related activities. That participant has an identified disability, illness, or life circumstance requiring service. The activity is facilitated by a professionally registered horticultural therapist, and that participation is in the context of an established treatment plan or a rehabilitation plan. And then on the other hand, the components of the therapeutic horticulture program is that the engagement of a participant in active or passive horticulture-related activities. And the participant may have an identified disability, illness, or circumstance requiring services. The activity is facilitated by a registered horticultural therapist or just somebody else with training in this area. Now, in the American Horticultural Therapy Association's definitions, the program types are really differentiated on the basis of individual goals. So goals are being documented and tracked per individual, or on the basis of an entire group. So for example, you might be working with a group of people with that are undergoing addiction recovery. And so rather than having individual goals for each person in that group, we might have general goals for the group, like learning new positive leisure skills, or learning coping strategies for cravings, things like that. So that just gives you a little bit of background. Now, we do both things at Wilmot Gardens, but primarily we're a therapeutic horticulture program. So we do have a couple of groups where we document individual goals for people in the program, but for the majority of our groups, our goals are our group goals. In reality, there are probably a lot more therapeutic horticulture programs taking place in the world, in the United States, where the goals are really based on the needs of the entire group rather than the individual. And that's not to say that in a therapeutic horticulture program, you can't tailor your activity to an individual's needs. And you should when you can do that, but you won't necessarily be documenting their individual progress. I want to tell you one other thing to kind of give you a little bit of foundation here, but there was some groundbreaking research done by Roger Ulrich in 1984. And he looked at hospital patients who had undergone gallbladder surgery to see if the view from their hospital room might have any effect on their recovery. He actually found that those patients who had views of trees out of the windows of their hospital room needed far fewer amounts of narcotic pain medication. They received more positive written comments in their medical records from staff than did those patients who had views of brick buildings outside of their windows. So that was really important because it started to help us understand that even just looking at nature, even just having a view of a natural scene could not only affect the way we were feeling, but might actually affect the way we were healing. So this research and others like it, there's Rachel and Stephen Kaplan are environmental psychologists that have done a lot of research, interesting research in this area, really gave credibility to the idea that exposure to nature can improve health. Their studies also provided a foundation for many other studies on that people-plant connection. And there have been a lot. There have been some studies on specific client populations, as well as passive interactions versus active interactions in gardens and nature. But that's a whole nother lecture, maybe a whole nother 2 or 3 lectures. So I'm going to really stay focused on our program and tell you a little bit more about that. And actually, what I want to do here, if this works, is to show you a short video of our program to kind of give you a sense of the space and some of the things that we do in it. I think this is about a 3-minute video, and then I will show you some more things.
I drove by this area every day to and from home, and I was just curious, what is it? Because it was sort of like a jungle. And when I became Dean of the College of Medicine in 2002, I became even more interested because I realized that this was the only remaining green space on the Health Science Center campus. Talking to some people, I thought we should restore it. We decided that the gardens should not just be a place to come sit and enjoy the outer doors, but in fact reflect the activities of the buildings that were all around us. So that was research, education, and patient care.
We were noticing that a lot of people were coming to the gardens to get away from the stressors that are happening around these gardens. And so we thought it was time to make that experience more purposeful, more intentional. That's when we started the Therapeutic Horticulture program. I have a little brother who had a traumatic brain injury when he was little. And so growing up with that experience, I think I always recognized the importance and the value in people with special circumstances. We are giving people the opportunity to build up their self-esteem and their sense of self-confidence and self-worth. So many of the folks that we've been working with, because of their disability or their disease or their whatever issue they're struggling with, they've felt that they haven't been contributing to society, and that makes them feel bad about themselves. So I feel like it's my job to help them understand the value of what they're doing here in the greenhouse and that their work really has meaning. And we also try to provide a community here so people can really feel like they're part of this space, part of this place, Wilmot Gardens, this greenhouse. And I think building or rebuilding a sense of community for some of our participants is also very important.
I think that a lot of times when people are struggling with mental illness or they're struggling with a physical disability or any other life trauma or event, that connecting with a stranger that may not be the same age as them or may not have the same experience as them or may not have anything in common with them is a sort of experience that is really valuable. And the horticulture therapy program in particular is so unique because it connects students from the university with people in the community to build connections over something of a third party like plants. And so it's really a unique opportunity to be able to have that experience. Hopefully one day I can become a healthcare professional that incorporates nature and plants into the healthcare setting and practice.
Okay, there we go. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of what our space is like and some of the people that are there and students that are involved. I always think that's a nice kind of overview. The Therapeutic Horticulture program at Wilmot and at University of Florida is not currently financially supported by the university. Of course, my position is I am on salary at the university. I'm a faculty member in environmental horticulture, so I am, but all of the programming that we do, so the actual programs that we run in the greenhouse, the gardens themselves, the plants that we plant in the gardens, all of that kind of stuff, we have to fundraise for. So, and that actually included the building of our beautiful greenhouse that came from a private donation. So we are constantly looking for grant opportunities and donors that are interested in what we're interested in. And so we apply for a lot of different grants. We solicit donations from charitable organizations and businesses and individuals. We encourage in-kind donations from contractors. We try to partner with other university departments and anything else we can do to support our cause, including 2 big yearly, twice a year, plant sales. And so those have become really important part of our program as well. And so the participants in our program help us grow plants, and some of them are starting from seeds, some of them we take from cuttings, and many of the plants will actually get planted out into the garden, but most of them will get grown and then sold at our plant sale. The money comes back to support the gardens as well as new programming and support our existing programming. And that's actually been a really great way for our participants to feel necessary and feel like the work that they're really doing is meaningful, and to be, have a really great way to be involved and be part of the community. So that's really fun. We're actually getting geared up. Our next plant sale is April 9th and 10th. So we're just starting to get geared up for that. And it's always kind of an exciting time. So that's kind of the downside, that we're always having to look for funding to keep going. But I would say that the upside of that means that we end up working with a lot of different special groups, because we might see a grant that we think, oh, that's a quality of life grant. I bet we've got a shot at that. And it might be a population that we've never worked with before. So we end up working with a lot of different interesting groups. And in some cases, it might be that we were interested in a particular population, so we look for funding for that population. Or as I just said, it might be that we see a grant for a particular population and we think we have a shot at that grant. So it kind of works both ways. The first grant that we received was from Dialysis Center Incorporated. This was actually a 2-year research grant to work with a group of people that had end-stage kidney disease. So they were all on dialysis. Many of them were quite ill, and we were collecting data. We actually did publish a paper on this group, looking to see if participation in our program had any effect on several things, but their self-perceptions of their health, their perceptions of their burden on their care partners, and some things like that. We did discover many barriers as we worked with this group. As I said, it is a really sick group in a lot of ways. Every single one of them ended up in the hospital at some point. Unfortunately, about 5 of the individuals died over the course of those 2 years. And so it was a fantastic group to work with. We really enjoyed it, but it helped us to really understand some of the barriers to getting people into our program. About the same time, we also received some funding from the Paralyzed Veterans of America. And this was a 1-year grant, and we were collecting the same kind of data with this particular group. We also received some funding from a local cancer foundation, the Climb for Cancer Foundation here in Gainesville. This was not a research group. This was just more of a wellness kind of group. And let me just back up a little bit and say that depending on the particular group that we were working with, we might have different goals. For our cancer group, for example, our goals were to provide an environment where we could provide supportive relationships and conversation, also to give people an opportunity for creative expression and that kind of thing. For our veterans with spinal cord injury and disease, we were really looking at some of the more physical aspects. How could we use horticulture activities to encourage them to move around in the greenhouse, to to practice using some of their affected parts, or to maybe develop some coping strategies or compensatory strategies for some of the things that weren't working as well as they had in the past. So they could be very physical goals, or they could be very spiritual or emotional, or whatever it might be for the particular group. We also received funding from the Dana and Christopher Reeve Foundation to work with people with stroke-associated paralysis. And so we wanted to do research on this group, but we actually didn't receive the full funding, so we had to cut that part out. But again, with this group, we developed some goals where we were trying to help them with some of the physical functions. So developing some activities that would help them to with eye-hand coordination, finding gross motor skills, moving around the greenhouse, things like that. We got some funding through the Center for Movement Disorders at University of Florida to work with some of their patients with Parkinson's disease. And again, as you can imagine, things like eye-hand coordination, fine and gross motor skills, ambulation, these things were really important, as well as things like problem solving and cognitive skills. And some of those things were also really important. And this one also was not a research group, but it was exciting because this was the first time I had ever heard of a therapeutic or horticultural therapy program being geared toward people with Parkinson's disease. And actually, we still work with a few of those folks, so that's been great. We have a group of veterans with mental health issues. Many of them have bipolar disorder, and that's been a really great group as well. They actually were our very first group that we started working with, and still work with them, although of course we had to take a break with COVID. It's been a really wonderful group there as well. One of the things that's unique about our programming in our program is that in most of our groups, not every single one of our groups, but in most of our groups, we invite the care partner to be part of the program as well. We are committed to improving quality of life for the care partner as well as the primary participant. And we do recognize that in some cases, the care partner is as stressed, if not more stressed, than the primary participant. Of course, it depends on what the situation is. But a funny story is that when we had our first group where we invited the care partner, I made the assumption that we would want to divide them into two separate groups. So we got the primary participants working over here together, and we've got the care partners working over there together. I was completely wrong. They wanted to work together side by side because this was a new positive thing for them to be doing together. This was not a place where they were sitting talking about the illness or the disease or how they're going to get to their next appointment or those kinds of things. They were doing something fun and something interactive and something positive. They were learning something new. And so this was a really wonderful way for them to spend time together in this positive way. And it was a really great learning experience for me. And it really helped me to realize how much more we could kind of do with our setting. And so that was a great thing. We also received some funding from the psychiatry department at UF for inpatients that had been hospitalized for severe depression and were undergoing ECT or electric convulsive therapy. This research group started out as a non-research group, but then we transitioned into a research group, in part because of some graduate research that we did in our program that really revealed a very dramatic decrease in depression scores for people that were in a program. And so we became very interested in thinking about dosing of therapeutic horticulture. In other words, how much of this type of program does somebody need to start to feel better? Let's say they're struggling with depression. First of all, how much therapeutic horticulture do they need to start to feel better? And obviously that's going to depend on the type of depression and the severity of depression. But how much do they need? How often do they need it? How much time, like how long does a session need to be? Once they've stopped sessions, is there a residual effect or do they need to continue sessions? So there's so many interesting questions there that we want to be able to answer. And I wish I could tell you we had the answers to that. We don't, although I can tell you that our research shows that it's a very quick decrease in depression for at least our research group. So it drops dramatically quickly and then sort of stays low. What we don't know is how long that lasts. But there's a lot of really great questions that we'd like to be able to answer. So what is that optimum dose, and how much therapeutic horticulture or horticultural therapy does a person need to benefit? So I mentioned to you that we rely on outside funding in order to run our programs, and that the upside of that is that we get to work with a lot of different groups. Another downside to that, other than the fact that we just have to look for the funding, is that what that means is that when the funding comes to an end, as it inevitably does, because grants are, they're a year or they're 2 years, or there's a certain amount of money attached to them. Well, when that funding comes to an end, then the program has to come to an end because we have no way to continue to fund it. And that was a really hard thing for me. I really struggled with that, because when you have a group of people that you feel like you've created an environment where you're making a difference in their lives and you're seeing some changes and they're happy, and then you have to say, well, sorry, this is our last session and we're done. That's hard. And so I decided I wanted to really find a way to be able to continue programming for these folks. And so I looked hard for some funding for what I was thinking of as an alumni program. It took me 3 tries. On my 3rd proposal, I was able to get some funding actually from the Medical Guild at UF for an alumni group. And so anybody that had been a participant in one of our programs that came to an end was welcome to come to our alumni group. And that meets once a week regularly. We ran out of the money from the Medical Guild, but I think we felt that this was such an important thing that we've used money from our plant sales to support that alumni group. So, and that's been a really wonderful group, because there's all different kinds of people in there with different backgrounds and different issues that they're struggling with. And many of them have been part of that group for several years. So it really is one of my favorite groups. We also started an addictions recovery group with some young adults from the Florida Recovery Center here in Gainesville. And that's been a neat group. Again, we're not really doing therapy with them because they're doing a lot of therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, all sorts of stuff over there. So I see their time with us as more of a release, a break from all of that kind of stuff, but an opportunity for us to teach them really some positive skills, some positive leisure skills, so that when they are back to their regular lives, they have some things that they can go to when they've got free time, and to try to keep them on a positive path. We also have a program for young adults with autism, and this program has kind of evolved over time. It started out as a job training program where we had them come and they had sort of different parts. There was a classroom part where they really learned about job skills, things like resumes and looking for jobs and how to communicate. And then they would come to the greenhouse and they would practice many of those job skills. And then there was a tutoring portion of it as well. And we really found that the greenhouse was a great place to practice those job skills. It didn't have to be that these students wanted to get a job in the horticulture industry. You can practice communication and problem solving and teamwork and attitude and all those kinds of things in the greenhouse, whether or not you're going to go on to work in the horticulture industry. Like all of our programs, they are on hold right now, but we have continued to have a tutoring program. Actually, I should say that's also on hold, but that we've had a tutoring program with the FNGLA here in Florida. And you can see there, Dr. Guy, who's facing us, is a retired professor here at UF. He's been working with these young adults to get them ready for the certification exam through FNGLA. And I believe we've had now 7 who've passed that exam. And many of them are actually working in the field. So that's really exciting too. Just some other pictures of them. We've also had a group, sort of what we call a gardening group for young adults with developmental disabilities. That's been a really wonderful program as well. You know, they get to learn horticulture skills and, talk about healthy eating and things like that. This is just a list of many of the groups that we've worked with. Some of them have been research groups. Some of them have just been non-research groups. We've just gotten some funding for the Love for Lawrence Foundation to start working with our university students here. You may or may not be aware that we're having a terrible issue across the country with really high levels of depression and anxiety and panic and stress and all sorts of terrible things among university students. And this was actually happening before COVID. COVID has only exacerbated the situation. So we are wanting to figure out a way to help alleviate some of that by providing programming to our students here. So we're just getting geared up for that, and we're really excited to do that this semester. So I have given you some different examples. I'm just going to kind of wrap it up here of how we can use horticulture interventions with different kinds of client groups. And I really want to reiterate that an essential aspect of all therapeutic horticulture and horticultural therapy programs is that we're trying to provide a holistic intervention. The goal is not always to cure people or to restore them to their original state of health, because obviously that's often not possible, but instead to help them to find a sense of wholeness again. And in doing that, we really need to make sure that we are ensuring their safety and their comfort, both emotionally as well as physically, of course. It also often involves helping them to develop compensatory strategies to increase their independence and their confidence and their greater well-being. And to do that, we really need to meet each person, each participant where they are. And we've become pretty good at creating an environment where people feel accepted, they feel respected, and therefore much less isolated than they had previously and more empowered because of that. In the video, I talked about the importance of, to me anyway, of creating that sense of community through our program. And I've really seen that manifest itself in many ways, because with that sense of community comes a sense of ownership that's really important. When a person feels a sense of ownership over their environment, over their community, over their sense of work, they feel empowered. And that really helps them to build self-esteem and self-efficacy and really self-worth. One of the ways that I can help to build ownership in the program is to do something simple, like make sure that the participants help us to clean up and help us to set up our activities. You know, it sounds very simple, but it actually really does help to encourage responsibility. Otherwise, they feel like they're just there to be served in a sense, and that's not what we're about. We're there to all work together as a community and to get some meaningful work done. So it helps them to feel that they're part of the workings of the program, that without them there, we would not do as well. We would not be as successful. So it's important for them to have a say over what we're doing, and for them to have some responsibility in just even the maintenance of the greenhouse. So I make sure that the clients have choices of activities, but then also choices within activities. If they are actively involved in organizing and making decisions, then they're going to feel a lot more engaged, and they're going to feel that sense of ownership. There are a lot of opportunities in the garden and through working with plants that help to regulate the nervous system and calm the body and the mind. Through nature and the garden, participants can really customize their regulatory techniques in a lot of ways, whether it's weeding in a raised bed, or it's harvesting cherry tomatoes, or it might be using the garden to engage your senses, or even just practicing a breathing technique or mindfulness. Plants don't judge. And if we can also practice and project a non-judgmental acceptance of people in our programs, then our clients can really benefit from that safe and that emotionally comfortable space that we are creating. Nature doesn't tell us what to do. It just is, letting us just be. And in that way, it really is an essential component to our journey toward health and wellness. And that's why it's just so important to include it. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. And if we have some time, I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear from you all.
All right, folks. Yeah, if anybody wants to go ahead and unmute and bring your questions to Leah, like now's the time to do that. So.
John?
Hey, can you hear
Yeah.
me? Hey, Penny.
How would one go about visiting the gardens?
So the gardens are open to the public. We do have a small parking lot here, because I know people get a little freaked out when they think about trying to park at UF. we do have a small parking lot right adjacent to the gardens that we can give you a parking pass for while you're visiting the gardens. And you can actually, if you Google Wilmot Gardens, it'll pop up and you can get our phone number, you can get the directions to the gardens and all that information. Of course, on the weekends, you can park anywhere on campus without any problem. And so it's a great place. There's not a lot of lights in the garden, so you really do want to come during the day because you can't really see anything at night. But there's a lot of great places. And of course, the camellias are really starting to bloom now, so it's a good time to come. But then the spring and the summer are also beautiful.
Thank you.
You know, one thing I didn't mention is that we now have a certificate in horticultural therapy at the University of Florida that we offer. Our first cohort of students are just kind of coming to the end of the certificate program. It's actually available to both UF students as well as what we call non-degree seeking students. So you don't have to be a student at UF to be able to take that. I actually have a couple students in Singapore that are in the program, Puerto Rico. So it's an asynchronous fully online program. And it is a college course. So it's not like a continuing ed course. It's a college level course. But if anybody's interested in learning more about that, you can get in touch with me and you can find my contact. I can put it in the chat box as well, but you can find my contact through that Wilmot Gardens webpage as well. I'll put my email in the chat so you can have that.
So I've got a question. So I think you've been involved with quite a bit of research with Therapeutic Gardens. Is there what are some of the biggest insights that you've been able to glean from in terms of increasing their efficacy? I mean, is it like a duration of time within the gardens or anything like that?
Well, that's a great question. And it is hard to tell. What we do know from some research that's been done is that even just a short immersion in a green space can make a difference. There's been some actually interesting research of looking at things like helping behavior and generosity and things like that have shown that even somebody spending as little as like 10 minutes in a green space makes them want to be more generous and more helpful even to strangers than somebody that hasn't spent that time. So what we don't really know is why is that? I think we all know intuitively that being in a green space, gardening, sitting in our garden, whatever that is, helps us to feel better, helps us to feel more calm, helps us to, so there's just so many both physical and mental benefits, but we don't really know why. What is the actual mechanism happening in our brain to make that happen? And I think actually one of our graduate students was looking at fMRI. They were actually doing brain scans to see what was going on. And what we found, we expected to see things calming down. What we actually found that things were lighting up. So in other words, certain areas of the brain were being activated, good parts of the brain. So we need to work through some of that more. But I think that, depending on what your thing that you're struggling with is that there's just something about the sensory qualities of nature, the non-judgmental aspect of nature, the connection, the recognizing that you're just one little part in this big world, that the problems aren't as big as they seem like they are. I mean, I think I could just go on and on. I don't know, but as I mentioned in the one study that we did here, we did find that the self-reporting of depression dropped. So the people were meeting twice a week. And in the second week, the drop in depression scores was dramatic. And then they just kind of stayed the same for the next few weeks. So it was pretty interesting. In that particular research study, we were not able to follow up afterwards. That wasn't part of the study, so we don't know how long that lasted. But I do know in another research study, we found that participating in the horticulture program helped people to feel less like a burden on their care partner, which was a big deal. And that did last for a little bit beyond the program. And we actually did have a measure point 3 months later and found that at that measure point, those benefits had gone away. So that told us that they needed to stay connected to horticulture in order to maintain those benefits in that particular group.
Okay, cool. Wow. So I guess I'm guessing more is better. Like, but if you had like a optimally, is there a certain point that like, maybe 30 minutes per day or something like that in green space is like ideal, something along those lines, or?
Yeah, you often hear when we're starting to hear more about park prescriptions, when doctors are actually writing prescriptions to patients to get out there, whether it's for exercise because they need some physical improvement or if it's for more, some emotional issues. But I always hear a minimum of 20 minutes a day. So I find certainly myself, of course, it matters if you're doing it at lunch and you're working or something like that. But I often find on the weekends, I go outside expecting to be out there for 20 or 30 minutes and I'm out there for 2 hours because I get absorbed into something. But yeah, I think like exercise, it's the same thing. If we don't do it, we don't benefit from it. And so it's, for many of you guys, you're master gardeners, you already get it. It's intuitive for you. But if we don't make it a habit, then it's not going to help us as long term. I think that it's going to help us every time we go out. But if we want that to be a sustained effect, then we need to be doing it regularly.
Well, cool. Well, thank you very much for your insights here, and you're getting a lot of comments on it. Like it looks like we're going to have to plan like sometime when COVID isn't such an issue, a field trip up to Gainesville and visit you.
That would
So-
be fantastic. We'd love that. And you come visit the greenhouse and the gardens.
So, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and I guess I'll provide Liz information as well to everyone. But yeah, thank you again so much for your time today.
So John, is there a way, I'm seeing that some people are asking me to email, and I think I've actually given my email to Bonnie several times. Sorry,
Oh.
Bonnie, rather than the full group. Is there a way
Gotcha.
for me to be able to save this chat so that I can respond to the people that have asked for information?
I can make sure to pass on any information that they're asking for here. But I mean, I think, let's see here. I guess before I go, I need to like just try and see who
All right, I finally just got my email to everybody. So you all should have my email. If you've got a question for me or you want me to give you information, please reach out to me and I will be happy to do that.
Leah, this is Phyllis. I wondered if you have interaction or if the Master Gardeners in Gainesville work with your program.
They do. And actually, they were one of our first set of volunteers. Wendy Wilbur was our coordinator at that time here in Alachua County. And so she really was wonderful in helping me get some volunteers to our programs. We do. And I still have a lot of Master Gardener volunteers that work with us. I also have a lot of student volunteers, and that mixture of age is fantastic. I love that. But yes, the Master Gardeners have been a really wonderful support, and they've also supported us financially. They've given us some money to build some raised beds and some other things. So especially when we were younger and didn't have our plant sales up and running. So that's been a really great relationship for us.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Yvonne Ingwall. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep.
This is a camellia question. I grew up in Micanopy, and there's a whole little pocket of old farmers there that love their camellias, and I tried my hand at it when I moved to Orlando, and it was an old established camellia that the T scale I never could get rid of it. Do you have any tricks? I know neem oil and horticulture oil seems to be one of the go-tos. Do you have any tricks that have worked there in your gardens?
I've got to confess that I do not work with the camellias very much myself.
Okay.
We have a groundskeeper that does, but I do, if you want to send me an email, I
Okay.
can probably try to connect you either with Steve, our groundskeeper, or Irma, who's a master gardener, but also our camellia expert. And she can probably
Okay.
give you some really good information on that, because I know we've dealt with that up here as well.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I think we're good to wrap up here. So I guess thank you again so much. And yeah, I guess everyone's got your email now. And if anybody else has any questions about it, and if you can't find Leah's contact information, I'll be happy to provide it to you. So, but yeah, thank you very much. Very informative. I mean, I used to live around there, and I used to go by that area all the time, and I didn't realize like how much activity was going on over there.
That's been one of our fights also. People still don't. And so we've been working hard to let everybody know that we're here and what we're doing. And that's been one of our goals as well. But it's more people know about us. So that's great. So again, I appreciate you inviting me, and it's one more way to get the word out, but please come visit. And, you know, especially if it is anytime soon, reach out to us and let us know, because we're not always here, at least in the greenhouse. I mean, the gardens are always open. The greenhouse is not always open just because with COVID. But if I know you're coming, we can try to make sure there's somebody here to let you come in and visit the greenhouse.
All right, you're our first post-COVID field trip on the
Okay.
planned here. So
Excellent.
So thank you again for your time, Leah.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care. All right, folks. Well, I guess we'll go straight into our members meeting here. I put it out there like any items that came up. There's a few things that I'll pass it off to for anybody else, but that has something. I'll give you a little bit of time too that hasn't come up. But yeah, let's just go kick it off here. Legacy Award. Is Jody here?
Yes, I'm here. I'm trying
Okay.
to, well, you can't see me, but I can't figure out how to do it. Well, it says start video, but you don't need to see me, I guess. I can't. Anyway, what I'd like to talk about is Happy New Year. And usually in January at the awards banquet, we talk about the Legacy Award nominations. And I thought I'd just put a little buzz in your ear. We probably won't have the banquet, but I still want to put a buzz in your ear for the end of the month, the end of January, beginning February, when we will have all the appropriate documents in the document form and document section on VMS for the Legacy Award nominations. I just want to go over something to put like a little buzz in your ear about exactly what a master gardener who would qualify for this recipient award would be. It would be someone who developed and implemented a significant and enduring research-based horticulture education program or process that improves the ability of the Orange County Master Gardener program to serve Florida residents. In other words, some sort of program that works in a community, and such as with Head Start. We had one that was a development of programming for Head Start students, parents, and teachers. So it may not be that intensive, but it would be also something that would work in our greater community. So we'll get more information on the PH article that I just sent out, that was sent out in this month. And we'll continue with that. And John will be sending out an email with a little bit more information on it. So like I said, it was a crazy year last year, but there were lots of good things being done. So think about it, reflect upon it, and send in those nominations in by starting February 1st. Thank you, John, and everyone else.
Thank you, Jody. So yeah, everybody stay tuned for that. And I think the next item is probably with the plant festival or virtual plant festival. Is if Lee's on. Are you here, Lee?
I am here, yes.
So yeah, if you've got any updates or anything like that
Okay.
you want to share.
The review group met. We have an agenda of speakers put together, which is a compilation of our own master gardeners as well as some county agents. We are going to be, the entire committee is going to be meeting next Tuesday to finalize all of that and to finalize our fee for the day. We are going to, of course, have anyone who is a master gardener can attend the entire day or any part of the day for free. So there will be actually 2 different ways to sign up, is one of the things we're talking about. We'll have an Eventbrite for those that are paying, and then another method for those that are not, which would be our master gardeners. We're pretty excited about this, and once we get everything settled next week, we'll be talking with marketing. We'll start getting everything out there in the community, and that's when we'll probably post all the finalized information for the master gardeners. But it looks like a really great day. It's partially programs that people are going to talk about, such as hydroponics and that sort of thing, from our agents. And then we have a number of projects that are being done by our master gardeners, things about butterflies and a biodiversity box and things like that, a fairy door, some stem propagation, and also, I think I missed something, and a little thing on garden gnomes and how to make them. So we'll have all that for you at that time. John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks, Lee. So yeah, just everybody pay attention. We'll be providing more and more information like via email as well, just to reiterate a lot of that. I guess outside of those items, I guess I just wanted to run a few things by everybody. Shalise and I, in terms of just operations here, in terms of managing the plant clinic, Shalise and I we opened up VMS so that there should be open shifts now. If you want to come in and take up a shift, like you should be able to go in. When COVID started happening, we wanted to just keep it on lockdown and for us to have control over the shifts that were available. But at this point, I think that most people are familiar with the routine. If you are new coming in, just let me know, remind me, and then I will go through and get you reacquainted with the plant clinic and get you set up in terms of in getting you familiar with the updates that we have here. So yeah, I guess outside of that, the plant clinic, yeah, just go ahead and look in VMS for those signups. Lunch and Learn on VMS. Oh, okay. I think that's something else. If anyone has photos from 2020, if you took any screenshots, if you have anything that was noteworthy for 2020, Kevin, the director here, is looking for some photos. If you could just forward them to me, and I'll make sure to give you credit for it as I send them his way. But he's just looking for some stuff we're documentation for like what we've been doing throughout the year and that type of thing. It can be pre-COVID photos as well. I'm happy to go through and see what we've got available. And
John, does
Yes.
this include photographs from our downtown garden volunteer workday?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
And while we're at it, I would like to invite Master Gardeners to sign up to come and volunteer. We meet the fourth Wednesday of each month, and we have a good time, and you get to learn a lot about native plants and Florida friendly.
So, yeah, go ahead and take a look. I think that one's on VMS, and you can coordinate with me and Tia if you've got any questions about that, and Phyllis as well. But yeah, outside of that, I think that about Canvas issues for anyone that is retaking the course or going through and trying to get access to the material that the new class is having, and just go ahead and keep a lookout with Canvas. It's sometimes I've noticed some people haven't logged on yet or set up their accounts. A lot of times these things might go to your junk email. So just try and look for something that is called Canvas or InStructure, and then go ahead and try and get set up here. And then, see how it is getting familiar with it. And if you've got any more questions, let me know. If there are some people that still want a little bit more familiarity after, they've given it a try and some pointers, I can run through with anybody at some point. Like I'll try and set up a meeting for, for me plus whoever wants to get a little bit more information on Canvas and some familiarity, because I think that I'm going to be running through with the new class on there. But for you guys, it's mostly just making the lectures available. I will be doing Zoom classes with the new people coming in, the new trainees. It'll be once a week. But for this, it's just all up to you because everything's pre-recorded and set to go. It updates once a week. All the new lectures will become available to you, and it should be pretty straightforward for the most part. So, but we'll see where we're at after the first week or two, and if anybody needs some more assistance, we'll take it from there.
John, could I say something?
Yes, Janie.
This is Janie. I just wanted to let you all know that the class actually starts this week, and I find it very exciting because we are having the virtual class, and John has put a lot of effort into making this successful, and we are partnering with 3 other counties. So it's a large group of folks, and there is some great material that I think you might want to take advantage of if you're looking for refresher. So don't forget to try to find that Canvas invite that he sent out. Thanks.
Thank you, Janie.
Well, I would.
All right. Well, if there's anything else real quick here, I can try and, I'll give you the floor if there's anything else that we might have missed. Anybody? I'll give you 10, 15 seconds here. Okay. All right. Well, outside of everything we just covered, just pay attention to your emails, and I will. Yeah, I sent everything out in for the emails in Canvas. So just go ahead. I'm looking at the chat here.
Yeah.
So is the schedule available? Well, basically it's the same material as normal. If you want me to send, like, if there's anything that you feel like you need to get refamiliar with, I'll make it available to you. But I mean, it's not all, you guys are just going to have to wait for that particular week, and it's all on Canvas. But if you would like, I'll try and remember to send an email out with the actual schedule. But the material should be pretty similar to what has been covered the past 3 or so years. Well, all right, everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year, and hopefully happier New Year than last year. I can already feel like we're getting there with people getting the vaccines and everything. And
getting rid of Trump.
Whoa. We're not talking about politics here. I'm gonna kick you next time that happens, Penny.
I thought I was muted.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
On that note, we're ending the meeting. So
I thought I was muted.
Take care, everybody.